Hi, Fatima. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Maybe to start off, tell us a little bit about Masdar Indonesia and what it does.
So Masdar Indonesia is part of the Masdar company, the Masdar family, which is the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company. We are a UAE-based company that was established almost 2 decades ago, focusing on the development, establishment, and the advancement of renewable energy and sustainability. Masdar Indonesia is the satellite office that looks into Indonesia as a market, based in Jakarta. And the Indonesian office role and responsibilities is to expand our portfolio in the market here in Indonesia by collaborating and strengthening our relationship with our stakeholders in the country, by staying up to date with market updates and market regulations, as well as closely supervising our ongoing projects.
Right. And maybe help us understand a little bit about what you do exactly at Masdar Indonesia.
So I'm the president director of Masdar Indonesia, and that basically it's a fancy term for country lead, basically. And I lead the team here at looking at Indonesia as a market. We have several experts on the team that are tasked to basically identify, originate projects and business development opportunities. And my role is to guide them, to lead them, to direct them in terms of making sure that there's alignments between our headquarters back in Abu Dhabi and also what we're doing on the ground here.
Right. But before this, I think way before this, I understand you're part of the technology team at Masdar, and you led the Serata floating solar project in Indonesia. So that's quite the jump to your current role and where you are today. Any comments that you'd like to share with us about this, and maybe tell us a little bit about what's guided your work and your decisions here?
Yes, that's true. I was part of the technology team within Masdar Abu Dhabi, and that was for almost 3.5 years. At the time, I was looking at all kinds of advanced technologies under the umbrella of sustainability. And that's really speaking to one of our core values in Masdar, which is being an early pioneer and innovator in terms of renewable energy. So with that, our technology team was focused on assessing technologies that would help us become more competitive in big markets, that would help us in optimizing our energy production in our power plants, and would help in coming up with innovative solutions for operations and maintenance. So that was quite interesting at the time. As part of my time at technology, I also looked at floating solar. So, and that was my link to the project. I was able to do a short business rotation at the US National Renewable Energy Lab. And with that, I was able to look more in depth into floating solar technology. And at the time, we were also slowly creating the Cirata opportunity with Indonesian market. So afterwards, I was able to take on the lead of the project, and my task at the time was to get to financial close, negotiate with lenders, negotiate with the contractor, get everything in place, being able to properly coordinate with our partner as well on the project. So I guess it all started from being as part of technology. By background, I'm an engineer, so I'm always quite curious about different technologies, about problem solving, finding solutions, and that is really the main guidance for me in my work. In terms of what guides me through my decisions, the very robust understanding of what we do in Masdar, right? Having that confidence in what we're doing, having shared values with my own company is very important, and that's really what leads and helps me decide on a team level, on a corporate level for the company and for the office here.
Right. And in working on such a milestone project, how has that informed your own outlook and perspective regarding the current state of the energy transition and where it needs to be today?
So I've been working in the Indonesian market for the past 4.5 years now, and I've been very close to the ground because I've been also living here in Jakarta for the last almost 3 years. So working on the Cirata project, the largest of its kind in Southeast Asia, definitely gives a very different perspective because it was able to unlock the market for Indonesia. It was able to open up the door for much more opportunities when it comes to renewable energy. I truly believe, and I've seen that firsthand, that the project's success led the way to more projects within the market here. I think the positive thing I've seen is that even the government of Indonesia has built up more confidence when they've seen how such a complicated technology was able to be developed on such a large scale. And Masdar was able to showcase its very strong engineering and finance capabilities throughout this project. With that, Indonesia, it's a huge market. It's the fourth most populous country in the world, and one of the largest ASEAN countries when it comes to consumption as well. So the energy transition in the market here has been quite positive lately. They have been shifting towards accelerating the deployment of renewable energy. We've been seeing more regulations that have been introduced to the legal frameworks in the last 2 years alone. And that it's a positive signal, right? Of course, there's always room for improvement, and there's always the need to accelerate and to expedite. Nowadays we're talking about climate change, we're talking about climate action, and generally the world is slightly behind the targets that we're supposed to be implementing as a planet. So all the countries have been trying to put more efforts, expedite and accelerate the deployment of renewable energy, and also to look at other innovations in the sustainable spectrum. So I think Indonesia is definitely on the right path. As Masdar, we are a long-term investor and a long-term developer and a partner to the government here. And our intentions is to stay and to support them in being able to reach their goal of 23% green energy by 2025.
Right. And, you mentioned as well that you've been living in Jakarta for about 3 years now, and we've really seen quite a few big changes that have come, especially in the way of regulatory frameworks and the like. What other observations have you made regarding, the state of the local energy transition for the local energy and power industry, and how do you feel this compares to the rest of the ASEAN region as a whole?
So, as I mentioned earlier, that there has been quite a few positive introductions to the legal frameworks in Indonesia. One very recent example is the fact that before a few months ago, there was a limit on how much water surface you can cover with solar panels, right? And recently, less than 2 months ago, they announced that now instead of 5%, it went up to 20%. And actually, the regulation even allows for going beyond the 20% if the developer is able to justify that there's really no impact on environmental and social. So, and that's a very, very positive change, right? This really shows that the government is walking the talk, and they are pushing for more deployment of renewables, and they're expanding exponentially. I've seen one of the observations as well is that the government is very open to suggestions, right? The developers, the private market, the foreign investors, we are much closer to the projects, and we're able to really share our lessons learned, ways of improving the legalities around developing a project. We have been maintaining a very strong relationship and very close, friendly relationship with the government in a way that allows us to always share the feedback, lessons learned, and we know we're going to be heard, right? We know that they their purpose is for the betterment of Indonesia, and for them to be able to get to that target of 23% by 2025 as soon as possible. So I think that I've seen the room for improvement has been acted on, right? A lot of our ideas and suggestions have been taken on board. We have been called, similar to other developers, developers have been called to meetings with the government to simply just hear you out, right? To give ideas and thoughts on how you can basically propose solutions or business models that you think would be much more practical. So they're moving away from the very conventional, traditional way of doing things, and now they're really promoting the public-private partnership agreements. They're promoting hearing out the private sector as well more. In terms of ASEAN, so Indonesia, like I said, Indonesia has quite high technical potential when it comes to renewable energy. Just like other Southeast Asian countries, also quite similar in terms of archipelago nature. So ASEAN generally has been quite active in the last decade or two, right? In terms of renewable energy, you have Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and so on. So Indonesia, for Masdar, Indonesia is a key market within Asia Pacific. And this is not only with the Chirata project, we've also invested into geothermal energy in Indonesia, right? We invested into the second largest company in the world, Pertamina Geothermal Energy, which has 1.9 gigawatts of operational projects and another pipeline of 600 megawatts in the next 5 years. So for us, that is a strong testament that we see Indonesia as a promising market. We see that there has been positive signals, and we believe that the future coming is also going to be positive. So from that perspective, we are quite confident in ASEAN. ASEAN generally has a very high technical potential when it comes to solar energy. Some parts of ASEAN also has high potential in wind energy. And of course, Indonesia and other neighboring countries, they fall along the ring of fire, which is geothermal energy. So we see a lot of room for being pioneers in sustainability within this region.
Right. And in the region itself, for its sustainable development and the general drive towards net zero, would you say that this technological focus is one of the key focus areas for the region?
It would be very difficult to limit it to just that. I think what I've seen is that it's always an integration of multiple things, right? For you to be able to provide the best quality service or product, it's really an integration of having the legislation in place that would open up the market, that would allow the developers to come in aggressively. And then, of course, technology innovations always help in minimizing risk, in creating systems which are adaptable or are calibrated towards a certain application or even location. So I think it's an integration of of multiple things together.
Okay, I see. Thank you for answering that. I want to talk a little bit about policies and government, as well as the regulatory frameworks that are currently in place. How do you feel they play a part in the energy transition? And, where do you think the current room for improvement is?
Definitely. I think it's absolutely vital to have the right set of policies in place, because without that, as a foreign investor or the private market will have it's going to be very challenging for them to really contribute too much, right? Because the government is the backbone of the country. And it's important that the government, you have the government's buy-in, you have their support and their active engagement in the supply chain or in the life cycle of the project. So I definitely think that policies, government frameworks, legislations are absolutely vital, and they would be pivotal, right? Because if a country has a regulation which limits, capacities or even applies penalties for not being able to achieve a certain target, that would all be that would have a big impact on the risk allocation profile for developers when they're assessing projects. So that's very important. And, it's not, when you don't have government support or the policies in place, projects will take longer time to be deployed. And like I said, we're in the era of where things are being done very quickly, and every country all over the world is trying to accelerate exponentially the deployment of renewable energy. So there's no time anymore to sit and wait for policies to be established. So what we're seeing in many countries, and we've done that for Masdar as well, we like to see ourselves as a long-term partner of the government, because we've been in countries where we did not see clear set of policies, and we were able to sit down with the government, walk them through what should be implemented, look at past projects, learn from improvements, and increase efficiencies of implementation, and basically implement the best, right? So as long as there's willingness from the government to really deploy renewables or sustainability and to focus on the energy transition, then that's your first step. In terms of room for improvement, yes, I think, as I said earlier, there's always room for improvement. Countries are, it's not easy to shift from one regulation to the other. That's why I think it has been quite impressive, to see in Indonesia the positive shift in mindset when it comes to renewables. Looking, being kind of one of the countries in ASEAN that's been considering coal retirement, for example, right? That's been considering even expanding their energy transition goals. They have been actively reaching out to the market, going beyond Indonesia to look at successful business models and seeing how they can implement that. So I think that's been definitely a very positive sign to the private market. In terms of where do I think there could be more improvement, I think what I would say probably is maybe emphasizing more on speed, right? Everyone wants to achieve and implement projects faster and bigger. And with that in mind, I think what's required is to be able to promote foreign investment, to promote public-private partnerships, is to provide platforms for the private market to be able to come together with the public market, with the public sector, and really try to fast track a lot of the ideas that have been discussed for a while, but not yet seen the light, right? So I think that things will move much faster if we can improve the communication, improve the dialogue between all parties, whether it's suppliers, vendors, academia, government side, private side, lenders like banks and financial institutions. I think that will definitely have a positive outcome to the energy transition mechanism.
I see. Thank you. Let's say looking to the future. So tell me a little bit about any plans that Masdar Indonesia may have regarding the energy transition, as well as subsequent decarbonization efforts.
Yes. So from our side, as Masdar Indonesia, as Masdar as a whole first, right? Today, Masdar has 20,000 megawatts gross capacity of projects, renewable projects across 40 countries, right? And that's in the last 2 decades alone. Earlier this year, we announced as Masdar, we are targeting to achieve 100,000 megawatts by 2030. So that's multiplying our current capacity by 5 in the next 7 years. So that, of course, is globally, right? And that means that all offices in all regions will need to think about exponentially growing their presence and their portfolio across the market or the region that they're active in. Indonesia is a key market for Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is also quite a big region. It's also highly dense in population. So Indonesia for us has a lot of focus because of the potential that I mentioned earlier. For Indonesia, we have invested in floating solar so far, right? Geothermal earlier this year with our investment in Fatima geothermal energy. We also have 2 years ago, we invested in a joint venture where we focus on behind the meter or captive market for Indonesia, right? And that joint venture is called Solar Radiance. And that one is also doing quite well. It's moving with the market. It's trying to capture projects that are focused on private offtake. Beyond that, we are quite active in the bidding, the tender process with PLN projects. For us, that also is one of the key streams that we're focusing on. And then we have several initiatives that are being discussed at the moment with PLN or with the government of Indonesia on a government-to-government angle, right? So the Masdar being, even though we're a semi-government, but we are owned by Abu Dhabi government entity, right? So basically, we come from that angle, and we have that kind of government-to-government discussions with the Indonesian side here. And we're looking at initiatives which are going to be long-term for Indonesia, 10, 15 years plan that Masdar Indonesia office can provide for the country here. So we're kind of looking at that. And then also, we have continued interest in the export project from Indonesia to Singapore. That has been fairly, public in the news for a while now. Singapore is looking for sources of energy, and Indonesia is one of the potential markets that will provide that. And we are working very closely with our partners to develop that opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds very interesting to see, what plans you're putting into place. And I think, we're really going to see a lot of growth from Masdar Indonesia over the next couple of years. But I think, how do you think the industry itself is also going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? What are some of the upcoming trends that you can foresee?
We see a big push on the floating solar technology in Indonesia. As I mentioned, the big trigger, of course, is the removing the limit on the water coverage from 5% to 20% and even beyond. That opens up, that's a very, positive news for us as well. We're quite happy to see that because of the Cirata project, that had a very good impact on the market as a whole. So we see a lot of push now on floating solar. I guess Indonesia, from the Cirata project, they were able to build up more confidence on the technology as well, given that the floating solar technology is relatively a niche technology. So that's one for sure. We have been following the captive markets for some time now in Indonesia, and it has gone through ups and downs for sure. But we have been seeing some signals of a change that's about to happen soon. So we're going to continue to follow that kind of stream, the captive market stream, private offtake. So I think I would say those are the two main applications that we've been following now, and that we think are going to help push. Of course, the standard solar energy projects are going to continue. They're going to continue to grow within the market here as well, as I mentioned, because Indonesia also has high solar energy potential. So from that perspective, I think that would be our outlook for now for Indonesia.
I see. And, just to cap off, what does Masdar Indonesia hope to achieve by being here at Enlit Asia 2023?
Enlit Asia is, of course, a very prestigious platform that is going to be gathering elite players from the market, from the government of Indonesia side, private sector and developers, as well as other supply chain vendors and suppliers. So I guess the hope would be is to connect with the different players, really hear more about the updates in the market from their perspective. The agenda seems to be quite interesting in terms of the panel speakers, that Enlit Asia will be hosting. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to really attend and to engage with the other participants and to be able to get more updated information about perspectives of other developers, other players, to really hear from the different market segments that would have an impact, a direct impact to the energy transition of Indonesia.
All right, thank you very much. I think that concludes the interview. Do you have any other things that you'd like to share with us?
I think from my side, I think the questions were quite interesting. It was comprehensive as well. So I think that's all from my side.
All right, thank you very much. Now I'm just going to move into the marketing questions. Just 2 questions from my marketing team that we'll be using for social media. So I think the first question is, what would it be if you had to give one compelling reason for people to join Enlit Asia this year?
So I'll probably say the same thing, that I've been following Enlit Asia for a while, and I really think it's a prestigious platform that would attract the right people, right? I think Enlit Asia is able to gather the right experts, the right leaders in different sectors within the energy transition field into one place. Right. So I think it would be the perfect opportunity for the professionals in the market, for those who are looking for factual and accurate information, to attend and to socialize with the different experts and players, and to be able to get more information about what's happening in the market.
All right. So the second question is, why should people attend Enlit Asia? And how do you think your session is going to contribute to their overall experience?
So I think the first part of the question is quite similar to the first question, right?
Yes, quite.
Okay, so I guess I can probably skip that. In terms of my session, if you give me just a second, I just want to reflect on the yes. So basically, my
do you want me to ask you
sessions.
that question again?
Sure.
So for Enlit Asia this year, how do you think your session is going to contribute to someone's overall experience attending the event?
So the panel session I'm going to be talking in is going to focus on securing capital to scale up renewable energy developments, right? I will be speaking from my experience on Chirata, because Chirata is not only the largest of its kind in Southeast Asia, but it's also the first IPP, renewable IPP, to be funded on an unlevered basis from international banks, right? And I think that's going to have a big kind of input to the topic of the panel, because we're going to be looking at securing long-term capital and funds for such projects. And then I will be able to speak really from my experience firsthand on the lessons learned, share some of the red or green flags that we've been able to see in working on the project. So I really think it's going to be an interesting panel, especially with our other distinguished panel speakers.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.